I want to start by welcoming you all to this panel, and I want to say a big thank you for coming, because I understand in the main session you have some of the top Hollywood scriptwriters talking about how to be subversive in scriptwriting, which sounds an incredibly sexy and interesting topic, and so anyone who is down here in the black box talking about copyright law takes some dedication. So, congratulations, you're all qualified copyright wonks. So I want to introduce the panel, who are all also qualified copyright wonks. We have Eve Neely from Writers and Directors Worldwide. We have Volker Reek, who is an expert on data and electronics. And we have Janine Lorente, who is a consultant on all sorts of copyright issues. And we have Cecile Desprang from the Society of Authors, Society of Audiovisual Authors, that's it. And we have Robert, I'm sorry, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your surname. Robert Thiem, something like that?
Time word.
Who is from the from Holland, and what organisation are you from? Sorry, I should have asked this.
I'm from no organisation at the moment,
okay.
So I'm retired.
That's why I didn't know what organisation you were from. Okay, cool. And I'm Robert Taylor, and I'm from FSE. And I'm going to start off by just saying kind of why this panel sort of developed, and that is because I'm in the unusual position of being a writer and also a lawyer. And even more unusually, I became a scriptwriter, writing for BBC, all sorts of children's and comedy stuff. And then I became a lawyer. And the reason that happened is I started to get interested in issues of authors' rights and copyright, and that led me to pursue another degree in law, and then to the position I'm in now, where I'm kind of trying to do 2 or 3 things at once. And one of the things that I kind of became aware of when I started to pursue the legal side of copyright was that there were lots of brilliant academics and lawyers who would give brilliant analysis of all sorts of interesting cases in copyright law, but they would almost never, ever talk about the most fundamental thing for me as a working writer, which was who's going to get paid? Is this going to actually improve the position of the person who is supposed to benefit from copyright, which are the creators? And they just wouldn't even dream of thinking about that. It just wasn't part of their makeup. It didn't occur to them that copyright was actually about putting money in writers' and other creators' pockets. And it was like kind of listening to a brilliant surgeon describing this fantastic new procedure that they developed, and telling you all about how it was miraculous and was changing everything, and then telling you at the end, well, actually, yeah, unfortunately, every time we do this operation, the patient dies. So you sort of think, well, where's the connection? And so today, what I want to try and do is try and make that connection, and it's also come out of my very peripheral part in the last few years developing the copyright directive, which people here have had way more to do with. I'm just on the sidelines. But what I noticed was when we sort of started going to people in the European Commission and saying, well, what about authors' rights? What about making sure that writers and directors who are terribly underpaid get paid more? They would say, well, what's that to do with us? Go and talk to people in competition, or go and talk to people somewhere else. But somehow, much cleverer people than I managed to persuade them to actually include authors' rights and remuneration in a copyright directive. And even getting that far, I think, is an amazing achievement for the authors' movement. So that's kind of where we are today. So, and the thing I want to try and do is look at how we can actually make this directive work and they put money in writers' and directors' pockets, because it's great having a law, it's fantastic, we need the law to start with, but now we've got to implement it. So first of all, I'm going to ask Yves to talk about his work in other parts of the world outside Europe and how he has tried to develop organizations that can actually do that work and get money into the authors' pockets. So I'll ask Yves to speak.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning, everyone. Yes, it was just to say who we are. I'm a writer myself, so I'm a writer and screenwriter, and I'm from Writers and Directors Worldwide. It's an international not-for-profit organization. We are, in fact, one of the 2 authors' council linked to CISAC, the International Confederation of Author Societies, so the so-called CMOs. And so we were an authors' council. We were talking about all the issues that we are always talking between authors, because this is really, we are authors, and so the Writers and Directors Worldwide is really led by authors. So we are an advisory body to CISAC, but another interesting thing, we are now permanent observer at WIPO, an understanding committee of intellectual property and related rights. So we understood, speaking of how we can cooperate, this was the main issue Robert asked me, between the guilds, the CMOs, other organizations. We discussed, like when authors are discussing about the problems with the producers, the new way our jobs are going, the new platform, everything. And we said, okay, we have now to use all our energy and our small resources, human and economic resource, to really focus on one thing. Because we understood, because we are international, speaking with all the other countries, all the delegates from other countries, we have a main problem. This is the law. This is the regulation in our country. You can get money in your pocket, like you say, if you don't have a good law. It is something that started with Janine a few years ago, because she was at the vice president of CISAC at this moment, and we were talking about this and said, in fact, we should really focus on this strong message, change the law everywhere. So we started this. You say, what can we do? We will organize ourselves to lobby for the change of the law. And we understand, like you know, that they are, in fact, very poor amount of countries with a good law protecting a so-called remuneration law. And we said, okay, we have to do this, so we will build first a campaign, an international campaign for the remuneration rights. And we tried to move forward step by step, so we started this campaign. This is the international campaign for the audiovisual authors' rights for equitable remuneration for the exploitation of their works. We have a patron, which a famous Chinese director, Jia Zhangke, and it was important to start this with some figure in a country like China, because you can imagine at the moment China is also discussing about the remuneration law, about to put the remuneration right for writers and directors in the law. You can imagine what it could be as an effect for all the other countries if China would have such a law. So, of course, we are linked also with the others working in Europe, but we are mostly working on the other regions. And we also commissioned a legal study, because we understood the problem is no one knows exactly what is this remuneration law and what do you need to change in the law in your country to have a remuneration law. So it was a legal study commissioned by CISAC, SA, and Writers and Directors Worldwide, written by Professor Raquel Chalabarder of the Barcelona University. And now we are trying, so each step moving forward, because we know only legal mechanisms are key to securing equitable remuneration for authors and save the local audiovisual industry. So just now who we are, but then some case studies, some example in the country that we faced, because we were speaking with a delegate, like I say, and we say, what can we do? And we saw, my God, in every country the situation is different. For instance, you have a country like India. We are working now with India. Imagine also the market, the Bollywood market for India. In fact, India has an excellent remuneration law, unwaivable remuneration law. The exact term is for screenwriters for the use of their works in any form other than exhibition in cinema, any form. So they have also all exploitation that exists and that could exist in the future. So in fact, it's an incredible law since 2012 and only for screenwriters. Don't know why not for directors, but only for screenwriters. And the question is, we saw this country and we say, well, wonderful, but there is no organization able to collect this remuneration right. So we started with the guilds, a screenwriter guild in India. There are several ones, but with one of the guilds that is trying now to federate the other guilds in India to create a CMO and to have the right to collect those remuneration rights. Of course, there are some difficulties, internal domestic policy issues. Let's say the producers don't want the creation of a CMO for this. But the remuneration law is existing, and the money, the broadcasters are normally keeping the money somewhere for the screenwriters. So we are trying to create this CMO. So you see, a good law, but no organization. So we will hear what could happen in Europe where we are waiting for a law. Another region, Latin America, where we did a lot of work, it was exactly the same. For instance, we have in Chile. In Chile, there was a CMO, collecting organization, but for theater, for writers. They had the screenwriters, but no rights, so no remuneration right. So we said, okay, we will use this CMO, and we will start a lobby with the parliament's member, the MEPs, to tell them, you need a remuneration law because your screenwriters and your directors are able to get a remuneration in some country, like in Europe, in France, in Spain, in Poland, but there is no reciprocity, so they can get the money that is waiting for them in those countries. You need absolutely a law in your country. And in fact, they understood it. They say, yes, we have also the artists that have some remuneration for the use of their work. So we had the help, I must say, from Michelle Bachelet, the president in Chile, that understood this. The directors there made a beautiful action. They put, the chairs from the director chairs in front of the parliament, but empty chairs on the morning, where there was a debate at the parliament. And Michelle Bachelet saw that and said, what's going on? And she said, oh, the directors are claiming for remuneration right. They say, oh, come, let's have a talk. And of course, it was a long process, almost 3 years, but as we look, not so long, in fact, 3 years. And we did it last year with the votes at the parliament in Chile from the Ricardo Larraín law. So a law named with the name of a director, so it's very nice to have such a law. And this is very good also because to be clear with that law, this is also remuneration for theatrical exhibition, broadcasting, online use, public lending, managed by CMOs, paid by licensees, and safeguarded from the production contract. So if you have such a law, it is also something very, very good. Another situation also, so just to see how different and how broad is the landscape. In Colombia, it was, they had nothing. No law, no CMOs. So there we also tried to understand what can we do. There were the artists, and the artists had also a remuneration right for the use of the works. And so we met, the ministry, it's not the Ministry of Culture in charge of this in Colombia, it's a Ministry of Interior, I don't know, the Ministre de l'Intérieur. So it was a guy coming, from fighting with the FARC in the jungle, and he came with weapons, and he said, oh, nice to have a discussion with you about remuneration right for directors, and we thought, oh, it will be very difficult to make him understand. And this guy was, I think, 35 years old, something like that. And he knew everything about the landscape. And he said, you're right. we absolutely need a law, because I understood Colombia makes so many, telenovelas sold all over the world. We had Betty la Fea in 40 countries, 15 remakes. And as I know the authors from Betty la Fea weren't paid any cent for the use of their work all over the world. And he said, so we have to stop this, we have to make a law. And it helped us, and it was the same process, of course, long process, with always the same opponents, I must say, the broadcaster, the internet service providers, the so-called users organization, which are very, very strong in every country. You don't know who they are, but they are, we will hear about that, who are these users organizations also working in Europe. So they are the libraries also, with the help of those users organizations. No, it will be a nightmare if there is a remuneration right for the writers and directors. But we succeeded. It is called now the Pepe Sanchez Law. So also with the name of the famous director who died just a few days before the final vote of the law in Colombia. And for this, like I said, because it's always different, we first created two CMOs, a CMO for screenwriters and a CMO for directors, because it was also the way to show, to tell them if there is a CMO, they will be able to sign reciprocal agreements with other countries and get the remuneration from those countries that goes to the directors and the screenwriters. So there were two CMOs without money and without a law. But the government saying, oh, we have the two societies, what can we do? And the money came first from the countries from Latin America, and then countries like France, Italy, Spain. And they say, okay, if the money is coming, we have to do the law that they can really then redistribute the money to our writers. Brazil, we are now trying to do the same. We started to create exactly the same, two CMOs, one for screenwriters and one for directors. And it's, again, different because, in fact, they have a law, but no one knew about this law. And the problem is the law wasn't implemented. So someone forget to say that, oh, we have it in the law, but we don't know how it works. We don't know how we have to, what we have to do. So we created those two CMOs. Now I must say the problem in Brazil, as you know, the situation is a little bit complicated. So we are trying to move through the parliaments, because the parliaments is just waiting. They don't know what will happen in a few months, but they say, okay, we can vote laws, why not? And even it's not voting a law, it's not creating a new law, which is much more easy. So it's just to implement the law. So it was just a few examples. We are trying to do the same in Japan. In fact, like I said, there are not so many countries with a good law, but it was just to say that it was only possible with trying to, to have the one, in some countries a guild, in other countries a CMO, but not the law. And we are really trying to put all those organizations together, to work together, to put the resources together, of course, with the help of CISAC and others, with the help of SAA. And this is the huge thing, but the most important thing, I think, we are authors. And I think the great thing was having always authors doing the first step, and authors at the forefront, meeting at the very beginning of those strategies, meeting the MEPs, the different ministers, because this is the best way, I think, to explain the situation. Yeah. So, thank you.
Okay, no, that's really interesting, and I think it's particularly interesting, we're talking about a country like Brazil, which has a law, but isn't implemented, because that's kind of, that to me is like the crucial thing, is it's great having a law, but how do we actually make it work? How do you actually go from the law on the paper to a author getting paid? And I think another crucial part of the jigsaw is the contract, because most writers start their work by signing a contract with a producer or whoever it's with, and the fundamental terms of that contract are going to take the rights away from the writer, or tell the writer how much, or the author how much he's or she's going to get paid. And so that's a crucial part of the jigsaw. So maybe I can ask Janine to talk a bit about that.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Robert. Good morning, everybody. Before being a consultant, I was, well, you read my resume, but I worked mostly at SACD in France, representing writers and directors. I also worked for 3 years in Los Angeles for the Directors Guild of America. And I ended up in Spain, working both in the music sector, in a CMO, and in a country that has one of the best laws protecting writers and directors, because they have an unwaivable, untransferable right to remuneration. So why I'm telling you this is that I will give you my point of view, having worked in all these systems, but there is no universal truth. There is no, except one, that we have to have an organization representing the interests of writers collectively, and not forgetting their individual rights in the contract. Just a few comments on Colombia. I'm helping Redes. Redes is a CMO and was a union for Colombian screenwriters. That law is challenged in the Constitution by a group of opponents, and I'm just quoting what they say. The argument in law is that this new remuneration right prevent writers and directors from exercising their right to negotiate alone and giving up their rights. It's a constitutional right to be alone. So that I thought it was quite funny that somebody would argue about this point. So yesterday, so I speak a lot, so you cut me. I have my watch here. So yesterday we had a great presentation by Ellen from the WGA West. She made a presentation with information about how writers are represented in the US through the Minimum Basic Agreement in the new digital world. And she went from the first line being written by a writer to the exploitation of the work worldwide. That covered every step of your life as writer, of the life of a writer. She could have done the same presentation before the existence of Netflix or any digital company, because the WGA, not being a country where writers have copyright, but it's a country where they have a global approach from the beginning to the end, and they have always negotiated contracts that covered worldwide exploitation of works, not only America. So even 25 years ago, they had this worldwide global approach. What's the situation now basically in Europe, but also it's the case in many countries in Latin America who have copyright laws? First thing is the copyright law doesn't cover the life of a writer before the work is done. When I say writer, I see the representative of the directors. I also, I also defend directors in these copyright issues and contract. No copyright law thought about dealing with the previous steps. So that's the first thing. Copyright law doesn't cover it only exists when the work is shot and it's in the market. That's one thing that goes towards your topic. We have to do something between the guilds and the CMO, yeah. because you cannot. When I was at SACD, I immediately saw this when television was changing. In France, it happened much later than in other countries, what we call the industrialisation of the writing. We had no protection at all for writers. They could be asked to do 10 revision. I have a paper which says write, revise, repeat. That's a motto for the international thrillers writers. Yeah. And it's true. The writers spend that, and they had no minimum. That, even in France, where the law is very good on copyright law, there was no protection. So that's the first way CMOs and guilds have to work, because guilds know how to negotiate these issues, and the CMO can provide support legally and financially.
Yeah. So you're talking here about not about just how much the writer gets paid, but how they're treated in the way they do their work.
Absolutely, yes, and how many free work can they do? Yeah. So, you know, in France it's the authorship, so you don't consider writers as employees or having a labor right. But at some point, when you have this writer's room, you have to think about it differently and protect the various steps towards finishing a work. Second issue with the copyright law is that they were, and CMOs, they are local. They were local, and they were protecting the local market. What happened in what I call the old world, in the traditional network cinema world, what happened? Let's take a German show or German movie. Unless I'm wrong, and if there are German writers or lawyers, tell me, but I think there are no minimum basic agreement in Germany. So the freedom of contract is total, and there is no right to remuneration. So let's say there's a TV show, goes on TV in Germany, the writer doesn't get anything else by his or her CMO. He only gets private copy, private copy and cable, but no. So that's Germany. Then suddenly this movie goes to France. France has excellent copyright law, but it's very often, for example, in theaters, there is no collection of money, and in TV, it's only for those who have kept the right, basically for French. Yes, it's national. So what does the German program will get? It's private copy, cable retransmission. Okay. Then this movie goes to Spain. Then he or she gets everything. It's a movie they will connect in theaters, on TV, internet, anything. It's a universal right, and they don't care about the contract, you have the right. So that's the old world, okay? What about a French movie, a French show? French copyright law is excellent. Buyout forbidden, great. We saw that no minimum basic agreement, no minimum fees for writing, but an excellent copyright law and a great SACD where I worked that collects lots of money from broadcasters, copying the system that exists for music. It's very complicated legally, I cannot explain, but it gives very big power to the writer through SACD. So great collection from TV, not in cinema, and that's what the old word. So buyout forbidden, the writer will negotiate a percentage from any sale outside France of his work.
So tell us, how do you think the system could work better? We've got
yes, I'm coming there. Okay, I only have 5 minutes.
Yep, sure, okay.
You told me 10 minutes. But why I'm telling you this? Because if it didn't work in the old world, imagine in the new world. Yeah. A French movie in Germany would get 0, except private copy. In Spain, so it was the same. Even French law protecting against buyout doesn't cover the fact that a writer will when he's faced with selling his work abroad, he's faced with a producer, and he has to get his payment through the producer. So because this was local, and I'm making the parallel with the WGA who thought global, and had global partners like the studios, then comes Netflix and all these, and they say, okay, now, your work is here, and I put it, and it's in 190 countries. Yeah. So from a situation where you could master the local market, then comes somebody, and even the Spanish, for example, take our Spanish colleagues, the right to remuneration works with Netflix in Spain. They will collect in Spain, but a wonderful series with such a great success in 190 countries will not get paid. Will only get will only get paid on the local market from the local subscribers. Same in France, only local subscriber. So how do we come? First victory, hopefully, is that for the first time, although we didn't get this right to remuneration that is excellent in Spain or Italy, but we got something. They say somebody has decided to put it in a law that it's not normal, one, that the investment of the time and creation of a writer and director would not get returned, because it's not given away, the movie and the TV show. It's sold every time. So from that, and that's where you said being pragmatic, between this law to the implementation in everyday's life of a writer, I think that this takes, and I always say this now, having worked in Spain, even if you have a great law, don't forget the contract. Don't forget the contract, because how do you face the problem now that Netflix is only paying in the best situation in one country? Well, it's helping the writer to get more money when signing his contract. So you have to have a common group between writers' organization and CMOs to develop a strategy to negotiate from the beginning to the end, the contractually, even if it goes to the CMO to collect later, but right now, immediately, it's through the contract, I believe.
Yeah. And that's the example of the WGA, because effectively American writers, there's copyright, but they kind of give up their copyright in return for a comprehensive contract that covers them from the cradle to the grave.
But that isn't that like a total fiction that in Europe the writers keep their copyright? No, they transfer everything for a lump sum. I hope he tells you the story that I told you. I mean, it's a fiction, and so yes, we have to work together. There's no way. Writers are both the owners of the guilds and of the CMOs. So together, I think it's the best way to define the best strategy and work at the European level, but locally. And the other day I was giving this speech with another organization, and I heard people say, yeah, but they don't want to pay. And of course they don't want. They're going to say, oh, I'm poor, I have no money, life is difficult. But there's always a way. First, because now you will have a directive that says something, so you have a power. And there's always, even if you don't get everything immediately, there's always a third way, and there's always a start. Because what? Because they need your content. What can they do without you? And I'm finished. In a couple of years, I come back here or in another country, and 3 or 4 countries will do the same presentation as WGA, will say, here in Germany we start with this minimum and worldwide residual. That's the goal that we should have.
That's where we want to get to. So now we've talked about local issues, so let's move to Robert. And I want to hear this story, for one thing. But
that's a cliffhanger,
I'm very interested in the way that you found yourself in big trouble, and whatever rights you did have were sort of being taken away from you. You weren't able to negotiate, you weren't able to do anything. But somehow you've kind of got a way around that kind of works.
Yeah,
Is that right?
we're halfway there.
Yeah.
My name is Robert Elbering-Time, and I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a screenwriter as well, so I'm very glad to be in this extinguished company with all of you. And I helped negotiate. I was a board member of the Dutch CMO, the LIRA, our collective rights organization. And after this sort of crisis we had for a couple of years, I helped negotiate a new deal. And I think a lot of things that have been discussed could be seen, that our situation could be seen as a case study. and we still have a long way to go, and I'm glad to hear all the efforts being made all over the world. Yesterday there was this very interesting meeting with 4 very good writers, local writers, one from India, one from Brazil, one from Denmark, worldwide, and they all did a Netflix original for their own home market. And it was fantastic. They spoke about the artistic freedom they had, the expression to write, the instant world fame their work gave them, and that they're being known and renowned as great writers. And there was this one big loophole that they didn't talk about and couldn't talk about. That was remuneration. That was about what were they paid for, and the bottom line was when they were really asked about the situation, about the payments, they were all paid off. So they had this one payment for their rights, had kept 0 rights for themselves, got 0 remuneration for the right, and what was really interesting, they didn't get figures. They didn't know how many views they generated with their show. So they was all kept in a black box. I think this illustrates very well the big importance of good laws, of good international harmonized remuneration laws, and a good CMOs to collect those things. What Netflix has done in an economic way is really interesting. They made a value chain. They possess you can see them as not only writers, but also as publishers and owners of all the bookstores. They have managed to set up an organization that covers the whole audiovisual value chain of, and for a company that started out sending VHS tapes to their subscribers, I think that's they've done pretty well. And a value chain, why is it so important and profitable to own a value chain? If you're at the end of the value chain, you collect most money, of course. If you the money is being made at the end of the value chain. Why is copyright so very, very important for authors? Copyright is a funny thing. It provides a situation that as a rights holder, you can always get at the end of the value chain to get your share of the profit. So if you're a writer, you get your royalties at the end of the value chain. If you're a theater maker, you get a share of the box office. If you are licensing stuff for whatever, for merchandising, you can get your licensing fee at the end of the value chain. And that's exactly what we need the CMOs for. Our CMOs collect at the end of the value chain. And what is happening in the worldwide industry, like the exploitation people, the Netflix people, but also the cable people, that they want to cut this thread we have, this copyright thread, to be able to float at the end of the value chain and collect over there. They want to cut it free. They want what they call it, they want to clear the value chain. They want to have a rights clearance. What happened in Holland, very short, is that the broadcasters, the cable companies, and all the production companies formed one big organization in order to clear this value chain, in order to see through that all rights were cleared, but also the operation was clear. The broadcasters stopped with broadcasting through the net and started with direct injection of their programs to the cable companies in order to sort of collectively own the value chain. And they said, well, there's no cable money left for you guys anymore because it's not what we call it retransmission anymore. It's now a direct first broadcast through. So they stopped literally paying any money to writers and directors, any for a couple of years. the funny thing, at a certain point, I asked my broadcaster, well, you've been now rebroadcasting this show for, I think, the 8th time now, and we're not getting paid anything anymore. Could we, what do you think of it? I think you should pay as a broadcaster now. And they said, well, we understand your point. It's a very nice show you've written. We love it. We love it so much. We're going to broadcast it next year again. But, you know, I have here this coupon for you for a dinner. So you can go to a restaurant and to celebrate your success. And of course, that's not a point we want to be in as writers. It's a bit like that. So I hope in a couple of years I can provide.
So Robert, how have you managed to solve this problem?
Well, what we did was we were. What you first do is we live in a civil society, whatever. You go to court first, but going to court took ages. So our first battle we won, but because what we did was we said, well, direct injection, we will call that retransmission as well. We covered that in our contracts. Yeah. Then the producers, this whole conglomerate of this whole cartel of the broadcasters, producers, and the cable companies, they said, no, we have this we think by law, in audiovisual law, all rights should be in the hands of the producer. This fiction of transfer of rights. We said, well, we have our contracts with our CMO, and they were signed first. Well, that's such a boring legal battle, and it's still not clear. At a certain point, we said, well, we cannot wait until we go to Europe, to Luxembourg, to have this in 10 years settled, and then there's nothing, no writers, and maybe Netflix is dead by then. So we started a lobby, exactly what you are talking about, and we thought we cannot do it alone as writers, because we're not sexy. We need directors with big names, and we need actors who are sexy. Yeah. So we managed to team up with the directors and actors. We set up lots of talks with all parliamentary people, but also with our Justice Department and the people who were working there, and we managed to have at least in law, in our copyright law, a provision that says there's an unwaverable right for proportional remuneration, only for broadcasting, for linear broadcasting. It has to be paid by the end of the value chain. So it has to be paid by by the cable companies and the broadcasters who get their money from the. Yeah. And then we said, but we need this for VOD as well. We need this for digital platforms, because that's the future. And they said, of course you need it, and we think that's really necessary. You're absolutely right, but we cannot do it. We said, why not? Because then all the money is going to the United States. So that was the whole argument of not having a good, in Holland, a good provision in law, copyright provision for VOD and SVOD, was because the fear of losing all this money to the United States, while all the money is going to the United States because Netflix isn't from the United States. So it was such a crooked, and what you see now yesterday as well is that all those platforms are operating on national, local level. So we should put it in law. Okay. Well, that's sorry. Yeah.
So I think the message from you is basically find a particular point you can lobby on, and then drill that home.
You have to put it in law, and what we always did was cling on those rights. Of course, you have to, but we're not exploitating ourselves. No. So I can give away those rights, but I need I need a unwaivable right for remuneration afterwards. So that's I think that's the message.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go back to the directive, the copyright directive, and kind of move the story forward a bit. As I said, I've been on the sidelines of that, but I felt that kind of watching that develop with the unwaivable right to remuneration campaign and the transparency triangle, that for the first time we were actually getting somewhere, and we were getting a copyright law which actually took remuneration of writers and authors seriously, and it was there. So this is great, and everything's going well. And David, who most of you know, does our lobbying, and he is telling me, yeah, everything's going well. I don't know, it's all going too well. Can we, something's going to go wrong? And I'm saying, oh no, I don't know. It's I'm an optimist. I think it's all going to be fine. And then, turning to Volker, suddenly I talk to David and he says, oh, there's this terrible campaign and everyone is saying that this new directive is going to close down the internet, and there are hundreds of thousands of people all over Europe who are protesting, and they're going to be flooding into the streets, and they're all writing to their MEPs saying, no, we've got to stop this directive. And now I'll turn to Volker.
Yeah.
And tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm not a screenwriter, so I'm a little bit outsider here. And I think if I would write down the story and hand in this to a publisher, everybody would say this is so absurd, this story, this is so unreal. So what happened is we had this first vote in the jury committee in the EU in June, which is parts of the parliament, some delegates, and this vote was in favor of the directive 15-10. But before this vote, I heard the first time about mailing a text to MEPs, etc., etc. But this was very, very little, and it was not very much in the public. And then we had in June we had a rally, a demonstration right here to the door on the Pariser Platz, yeah, against the directive the first time, and there were 150 people. And as you know, it's always crowded out there. People going to Starbucks, going to Brandenburg Gate, going to Bundestag. And nevertheless, there were just 150 people against this directive, which is not very much in my eyes. And the thing is, the opponents, they really suffer under the Internet 99-1 rule, which means 90% of the audience is just passive, 9% is clicking, I like it, and 1% is really active. And this is the reason why just 150 people turned up here. But then we had the very big vote in the parliament. And before this vote, we had a massive campaign of mailing and tweet storm, etc., etc. And as everybody knows, the first vote was not very successful. And when I saw this development, I said to myself, I think I have to look into this because it's very interesting what's happening. So what I did is I know one MEP quite well. She's from the Greens here in Germany, and I asked her, Helga, could you please help me? I need to interview some of your colleagues, at least 8 to 10 people, and I tried to ask them several questions about what they experienced in this period before the vote. And she introduced me, and they were very, very helpful, everybody, and they were from very different parties and fractions. So I just don't ask people from EEP or people from the Greens or whatever. And they came back with very interesting answers. And I put this together and made my mind up and wrote an article for a very small blog I used to write for. It doesn't have very much subscribers or followers on Twitter, but some are politicians, which I think it's very good. So I wrote this article, and a couple of people realized this, but only very little. And then I received a call by a German newspaper called Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, which is one of the biggest newspapers in Germany, I would say. A newspaper with a lot of influence, and they asked me, hey, we looked at your 2 blog articles, can we do one of it, and can we combine it? And I said, yeah, you can. I would like to to read it first, but then you can. And this was published in the mid of August. And of course, FAZ is something different than a blog with, I don't know, 500 subscribers, newsletter subscribers, definitely. And then I received a couple of mails and telephone calls, but also attacks on our server, so I had everything. And also I received a message by Axel Voss, who was the rapporteur of this, and he said, "Thank you very much for writing this, because it's exactly what we experienced, and could I get this article to let this article circulate?" And of course I did, and I received, by the way, a couple of mails from MEPs I never met, I never know, but very funny to see that Helga Trüppel gave them my email address, and they sent me thank you mails, which I like very much. And then something happened that the opponents declared a day of action. This was, I think, August the 25th and 26th. And me, myself, I went to Hamburg because it was a rally. And I have to say, I was very excited when I went to Hamburg. I have to go there, I don't know, half an hour or so. And I said, because I said in this article, this is all blown up, you know. This is not grassroots. This is AstroTurf, financed by US organizations, mainly CCIA, which is American Computer and Communication Association, and the Open Society Foundation by Soros, etc. Because this is open information. You know, you can get this information in the net. You just have to put it together to get the picture. Yeah. So I went to this rally in Hamburg. I was really excited because I said to myself, look, if you now go to the rally and you see thousands of people, you know, and then your theory is broken in a minute or in a second. And but fortunately, it didn't happen. I saw 20 people over there, yeah, during the protest. I did some photos, and I organized with some friends throughout Europe that they go to the rallies as well and doing photos. And even here at Pariser Platz, here, this place, and it was a Sunday with, we call it the open door day, where you can visit the parliament and other venues here of the government. A lot of people were on the road. And even here, we had about 100 people. 100 people. So in total, we had about 800 people protesting in Europe. We had cities in Poland, and Poland was really, really strong in this ACTA demonstration, really, really strong. And we had cities in Poland, I think it was Lodz, where we had more policemen than protesters. And a really, really crazy story. And I think...
Tell us about where the emails had been coming from. The MEPs were getting all these emails.
This was very interesting because a lot of civil society organizations, they used so-called engagement tools provided by a Canadian company, which is, by the way, founded by an ex-Google policy manager. And these engagement tools enable the people visiting the pages to send 20 mails to 20 MEPs the same time, 4 formatted mails. So you don't have to do anything. It's just pure clicktivism. Just click on this. There's no verification whether you are from Europe. There's no verification whether you already did it. You can do this 100 times, and it's easy. You know, I'm not a very good programmer, but it's very easy to do a program filling in this because it accepts any email address, whatever it is. It could be complete fake, whatever it is. So this has happened. I don't say that this was, all the mails were generated automatically, definitely not, but it's easy to misuse their system because I don't know why, but there were no rules or no possibilities to limit it somehow. You know, no capture code or just do geolocation where you say, yeah, you're not from Europe, you know, you're not allowed to write your MEP because you're from the United States. And we also did an analysis of the tweets, which is even more bizarre because more tweets are coming from the US than from the whole of Europe, and even from Washington, DC, there are more tweets with the hashtag Save Your Internet and Save the Internet than in the whole of Europe, which I think it's unusual because I can't imagine that there are many Europeans in Washington at the same time and being or taking care of the internet. And so I wrote a second article, which was a very funny story, because I said, I called the FAZ on Monday morning, said I went to Hamburg, very poor outcome of the rallies, and said, if you can do a report or an article within 2 hours, we will publish it tomorrow. And I have to say, I'm not a journalist, I'm not a writer, you know. So I wrote this article in 2 hours, and they said, okay, we will do it. And then after a week, I wrote another article, because so many things happened after the... Yeah, but at least not a journalist. But anyway, so I write like I would describe it or say it. So I wrote a third article of all the new developments, and the FSZ said, "Hey, we will do this again." So they did three articles in a very short period, and I think, I'm not sure, because success has always a lot of fathers, and if you're not successful, it's like an orphan. But I think I hope it could convince some of the MEPs, and I know from some that, you know, maybe they do not like the directive very much in whole and in all the details or so, but I think they were really annoyed about what happened, and maybe they voted in favor because they just said, you know, yeah, this is no good. This is not a good period for politics, because I consider this as asymmetric lobbying. I don't have a problem with lobbying. I think it's very good if politicians talk to people with knowledge. I think it's a good idea to do this. Yeah. But I think what's happened here is to use satellites, you know, civil society associations, satellites and proxies, yeah, to camouflage your real interest, and the real interest, yeah, is not to pay. This is all. And I think this is a lesson that we have to learn. And I said this before, the fight is not over. We're still in the fight in the moment. And I know from Helga Trüppel, she went to Silicon Valley last week, just came back and said, people from Google told her, we will take influence on the TRELAC in the moment. And this is something where everybody who's interested in politics, whether it's a writer or someone else, should really take care, or maybe talk to your MEP. Don't write him formatted mails. No, this is not good. This is definitely not good. But it's, as far as I know, they are very open if you call them, if you mail them, and if you express your own thoughts, and don't send email avalanches to them.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Yep.
Thanks. So, as Volker says, the fight is not over. So let's turn to Cecile and ask her, how are we going to win the fight, and then what happens afterwards? How are we going to make this actually work? What are your thoughts on that?
I think first I need to come back a bit in the cooperation between our organization and where we come from and where we are. I think it's important because the Society of Audiovisual Authors that I'm managing, which is an organization of collective management organization for screenwriters and directors. We have more than 30 members in 24 countries. We are cooperating very much since the establishment of the SA in 2010 with the European Association for Screenwriters, FSC, and Directors, FERA. And based on our experience, we have launched a campaign for an unwaivable right to remuneration for screenwriters and directors that we try to push in the discussion on the copyright directive. So we started the campaign before. The directive was drafted by the Commission, and our main objective was to have in a European law an unwaivable right to remuneration that screenwriters and directors would retain when they transfer their right to producers, that would be paid by the licensees or users, I mean the companies who are communicating the works to the public, and collectively managed, whether by CMOs or if there are better placed organization by this organization. And we were very much united in this objective, because it's the experience that you all mentioned, that you not only need the law to be good, you also need implementation mechanism. And that's why we propose this fully fleshed system and mechanism. We were not able to convince the Commission to take this on board because in European copyright discussion, we came from very far as authors' remunerations issues are concerned. And that's also why the DSA was created in 2010. Janine was there already, and it was there was a feeling that most of the discussion were very dominated by music issues at European level, because music is one of the big industry, and lot of copyright discussion were taking the music industry system as a model. And you probably know that the way the structure, the industry in the music sector is structured is very different from the one in the audiovisual sector. So the specificities of audiovisual authors, the presumption of transfer of right to producers, the complexity of the value chain, the number of intermediaries was absolutely not taken into account. In addition to that, in the music sector, you have voluntary collective management fully spread for authors. You know, probably you know that the music collection by collective management organization in Europe this is the main collections. Audiovisual authors collection in Europe only represent 10% of all the royalties collectively managed in Europe. So it gives you the scale of it. So we went on this campaign, but we realized that we were breaking a bit the rights holders' unity in the copyright discussion, where lots of producers' organizations, but also sometimes music societies organization prefer to discuss common interest situation, and it has been very difficult to target the specificity of the audiovisual authors. We were accused of being individualistic and not working for the global welfare of the industry. So when the draft was prepared by the Commission concentrated on looking at strengthening the bargaining power of authors and performers, so taking authors and performers globally and from all sectors, so having this horizontal approach, designing this transparency obligation of Article 14, a contract adjustment mechanism on Article 15, which are individual, 15 is individual mechanism that has to be triggered by an individual author or performer, and Article 16 on alternative dispute resolution. And when this was tabled, our three organizations campaigned for this transparency triangle becoming a square. I think this is David Kavanagh words, so that the right to remuneration would be added. We were partially successful in the European Parliament with the Culture Committee and Industry Committee in their opinions taking on board the unwaivable right to remuneration last summer, 2017. But in the Council discussion with the Member States, there was no room for this addition. All the focus was on Article 11 and 13 on the press publishers' rights and the value gap discussion, and even, including in the European Parliament, these were the two articles the most discussed. And when we started the discussion in the Legal Affairs Committee, hopefully the good opinions by the Culture and Industry Committee served as a basis for discussion, but it was difficult discussion because there was some opposition, including from our partners in the industry, the producers, the broadcasters, nobody wanted, as a matter of principle, any stronger provision for authors and performers in the copyright directive. So in the end, what we got in the Legal Affairs Committee is a compromise, which is a fair and proportionate remuneration principle, which is a bit more than a principle, it's an obligation, because the article says member states shall ensure that authors and performers receive fair and proportionate remuneration for the exploitation of their works, including online. So this is a strong principle, and we think that the value added of the compromise is that it also says that member states may implement it through, we would prefer shall, of course, through collective mechanism, implementation mechanism, and it mentions collective bargaining agreements, it mentions statutory remuneration mechanism, like in Spain, and in the recital it also mentioned collective management agreements. Yeah. And we insist very much on this, this article being a compromise, so if you water down it more, in the end we won't get anything, but also on the fact that it's not just the principle and a general obligation, it encourages very much member states to develop this collective agreement and remuneration mechanism. And today, this compromise was confirmed in the European Parliament vote on the 12th of September with the support of most of the political groups. And we are in the trilogue negotiation process. It means that now that the Council and the European Parliament have adopted their position, they have to negotiate the final agreement in cooperation with the Commission, so that's why it's called trilogue, with the aim to make the final compromise and the directive to be adopted. The Austrian presidency of the European Council is very ambitious in its calendar. They would like this process to end at the end of the year, because you know that we have European elections next year, and any agreement needs to go in, to be confirmed in a plenary vote in February at the latest. That's the objective. So we have, discussion have started between the three institutions, and it can go very fast if this calendar is respected. In general, I would say that the Council and Parliament position are going both in the same direction of strengthening the copyright directive. So all the discussion between for or against the main provision are a bit behind us. Now it has to fine-tune the provision. Doesn't mean that it's an easy process, but at least it goes in the same direction. This provision, Article -14,
why minus?
Minus, it's because it's to be placed before Article 14, the transparency obligation, and after Article 13, but in the chapter together with Article 14 to 16. This provision is a provision of the European Parliament. It's not something that the Council and the Member States have wanted. So the big work now is to convince each individual Member State to support this provision and to instruct their delegates to say in the trilogue negotiation, yes, we want this to become to be adopted in the European law. So we are continuing working together, of course, SAF, ERA and FSC. We just starting sending letters to ministers in charge of copyright in the different member states to call them to support this provision. And it's very important that our organization at national level continue working together in this process, because these decisions are not taken in Brussels. I mean, the position of each member state is decided at local level. So it's a call for each of you to follow this very carefully and to send messages to your ministers and local authorities to support this.
Yeah, that's very important. No mass males. So I know we're over time, but maybe we do have a couple of minutes for some questions. If anyone has a question, yeah, on the end there. Oh, well, sorry, we have to wait for the microphone. Yeah. Sorry, that was a bit quick. Sorry, I should have waited. On the end there. Sorry.
Thank you all for your explanations. They were all very clear. The one thing that I work for a Spanish guild, the Spanish Guild of Writers, and my question is, because I'm new to this area, I've been in management before, but not in this area, and to me, my biggest doubt is how is it possible that the best writers in Europe, the best storytellers, have not been able yet, which is my belief, and I'm sorry for this, I hope not to offend anybody, to create a great narrative for this problem. I think bureaucracy is always hard, it's always complicated, yeah. And it's really a challenge. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad work. But one of our main points to focus should be to create this narrative, and as simple and clear as possible. So I don't know if you want to say something on the subject, because maybe you found the problems.
I think the problem with our great writers is that they really don't want to be bothered with stuff like this.
Sorry for interrupting. Internally, a narrative internally for the authors, and then a narrative to the public. But I think it's needed precisely because of what you're saying too. Thank you.
It's true. Yeah.
No, that's a good point.
Problem when what we are doing, the need to come back to the authors. When I say we need the authors at the forefront, we have to, sometimes, but often, the real problem is the communication also between the authors, so that authors can be really influence their own CMO, because the CMO have a board of authors, but the authors have to be aware of those problems, and sometimes it is really dislinked. This is a problem, but again, a problem of resources. I say not only budget, but human resources of the people who can do the work.
Yeah. That's the same for music composers. It's exactly the same.
Okay, let's take Susan.
Linn Blom from the Swedish Writers Guild. I've been thinking of what you said, Robert, about that we don't have any numbers, no figures, that we don't know that when we sat on this Netflix discussion, just this non-knowledge was so very obvious in some way. Even, of course, and I think that I would like to ask, for example, any one of you, but perhaps Cecile, if this transparency triangle can help us to get more information out from Netflix and other services, because that is the big problem as a negotiator, because then you have no, I mean, every other production you can in some way follow the money, but you have no idea about the business models inside Netflix or inside other streaming services, and that makes it very difficult to get paid in the right way. That's one of our big problems.
I think the Article 14, the obligation transparency, can certainly serve as a basis to get information, but it needs the cooperation of the producers. The problem today is that producers and broadcasters are fighting against this provision because of the burden of administration it would create for them to inform all the authors and performers about the exploitation of their work. They don't see the long-term perspective, or for me it's a mid-term perspective, that it can help them to get information on their works on behalf of the authors, because the obligation is written in a way that it's the producers who have to give the information to the authors, but on the exploitation and also the subsequent licensing that happen after their first exploitation. So they are responsible for getting the information, and they are in the position with this obligation to contact any organization, any company they have sold the work to say, hey, I have the obligation to report back to my authors, please give me this information.
Yeah.
But it needs cooperation, and today that's not the spirit of this organization.
But I can
Unfortunately.
see a small tendency in Sweden, for example, that the producers are also rather worried about the situation. At first, they were very glad to be like work for hire. You get the money and you get some profit, and everything is all right, but you lose all rights. But at the moment, some producers in Sweden are a little bit reluctant when it comes to producing for Netflix and other streaming, because they have seen that all the back payments are going away, and they also wonder about this business model. So perhaps we can use that that worry that is among the producers I think.
Absolutely. I think, you know, we're living in very strange times, and it might be that we need to make new alliances that are strange to us, but if the interests align, then we should take those alliances. And I also think that, I'll just say one other thing, that we can also kind of find solutions, because people will always say, oh, it's too much trouble, we can't do it. But actually, you know, we can find ways that they can do it. And we can take on that control and responsibility for doing it. And that's what CMOs are good at doing.
Yeah. And
you know, so
especially having worked in the music, if you take Spotify, there's an alliance between labels, CMOs, musicians, everybody together. They get all the data. They need the data on Spotify. And the CMOs are getting all the data, and Spotify is not complaining. So there's no way we could have one sector, cultural sector, giving everything and not the other one. And I also want to say that the future of CMOs too is building digital tools to have all this data, because once you have the data, 100%. You have to be able to process it. But I think in the future they will have to it cannot continue that nobody gives the information. And the new technology like blockchain, which is being tried, will help reduce the costs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, any more questions, or can you all go and have a cup of coffee if there's 5 minutes left? Okay, great, thank you. Thanks.